I'm getting tired. My ability to speak English is going downhill. Should I go ahead and get started?
Yeah, why not?
Yes? Okay. Hello, everybody. You're listening to The Triad, where we're spooky but sensitive. I'm Shannon.
I'm Shelby.
I'm Hannah.
Yay. Okay, do we have any announcements? I don't think.
No? Maybe? No.
I only had 1 cup of coffee today. So, goodbye.
Does that count as an announcement?
None of our announcements are really announcements, so I think so.
It's a tragedy in Hannah's life.
Yeah.
I said a work nightmare last night.
Shannon and I found an apartment.
Hopefully.
Where everyone thinks we're crazy.
Hopefully. We haven't heard back yet, but yeah.
Because the toilet
They're reviewing
is on a
our
throne.
application.
Yeah, okay, so it's an attic. It's basically the 3rd floor of this like giant ass duplex building thing. And so it's got like these great slanted ceilings and all this stuff, but they had to accommodate for stuff underneath. And so in the bathroom, the toilet is behind a wall and up 3 stairs.
It's beautiful.
It's great.
It's got like the world's ugliest vinyl flooring.
Vinyl tile.
Yep.
Yeah, it's great.
And then the bedrooms, like, all of it is, like, slanted ceilings, but they're all, like, vaulted, and then there's, like, all the lights are what would essentially be skylights, but because it's the attic apartment, they're, like, regular windows, but they're, like, floor to ceiling. It's beautiful.
It's great. Yeah, so we've applied.
And there's a spooky closet.
Yeah, there's a creepy closet.
Yeah.
That's where the dryer is.
Uh-huh.
Because it has a portable washer and dryer. And a dishwasher. And that's all we wanted.
Is all I wanted. That and my cat.
Yeah, and the dog. Yes.
I am just tired of Shannon picking apartments that are for fucking hobbits because I have never once been comfortable in one of your homes.
Dude,
you keep saying
ceilings
slanted ceilings. They may be... Listen, they're going to be normal for you. I am going to lose an eye.
They are like, no, it's not short at all.
No, but there's lots of corners, Shannon.
There's lots of corners. I'm going to lose a toe. It's fine. But...
No, I mean lots of corners on the ceiling. Lots of people have said you're going to hit your head on one of those slants, and it's going to be Hannah when she comes to visit, because I'm 5'4", and Shannon is 5'2". Yeah. So it doesn't bother us at all.
And I'm like... a fucking whale over here, 9 feet tall. It's fine, whatever.
Like, trust me, it's different than my crack house apartment. I swear, it's different.
Like, I hit my head on the ceiling of the crack house.
I had to sit side saddle on your stupid ass toilet.
It's not like that one either. In my studio, it's not like that one either. I promise.
Every person I have shown the like video tour to has been like, but what happens when you come home drunk and you have to like throw up in the toilet and you get stuck on the stairs? And I'm like, well, I don't drink, so
I was gonna say, what do they think we do in our spare time?
I'm like, Shannon doesn't drink and I'm only a social drinker, so like,
yeah,
we good. Other people, if they want to come over and be drunk and fall down the stairs to the toilet, that's on them. They get to clean it up.
Yeah, like.
But also don't show up to my house drunk.
Yeah,
please
seriously.
And thank you.
That happens, you're not allowed inside. Yeah, but anyway, yeah, we applied for it. Hopefully we get it. I don't see why we wouldn't, but it's me, so I plan for the worst always.
Same.
So, yeah. I think that's it. God, I hope we get that apartment.
Me too.
Ugh.
Because I love it, and it's cheap.
I love it so much. It's so cheap. It's so cheap. And it's like 2 blocks away from the public library. I can walk to class. I won't if it's cold or raining, but if it's nice out, I can walk to class.
Yes.
Yeah, it'll be great.
It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
And
I do have a real announcement now that I think about it.
Okay.
I only have to turn my thesis in one more time and I'm done.
Oh, heck yeah.
And then I have 3 degrees in English.
Yay.
Okay. Let's do
No,
this.
I don't have an announcement.
Okay. Cool. Okay, so I have a PowerPoint and an outline. They're in the episodes folder.
I kid you not, I made minimum of 10 PowerPoints yesterday.
So, yeah, warning, I got it to 18 pages, but it's 18 full pages. Yeah, it's me though. We'll get through it really fast. So, okay, so today we are talking about Madalyn Murray O'Hair. Do either of you know who this woman is?
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
So, Hannah, without spoiling anything, do you have an opinion on Madalyn Murray O'Hair, like as a human?
Not really.
Okay.
I don't really give a
shit
shit either way.
No. That's good. That's good because, okay, so Madalyn Murray O'Hair was an atheist activist, basically, in the 60s through, like, the late 80s, early 90s. And she was dubbed the most hated woman in America by Life magazine in 1964 after she won a Supreme Court case that basically fully pulled prayer out of public schools. And that's mostly what she's hated for, but I'm going to make a case that we should hate her for different reasons. Basically. Yeah, so my sources, I have a lot of sources this time. So I have an article from Texas State History Association. I have one from News 4 San Antonio. I have one from Texas.
My mom's calling.
What?
My mom is calling.
Of course. Okay. I have one from Texas Monthly.
I'm recording my podcast.
Which,
She has mono. I know. Okay. Okay, bye. Sorry.
It's okay. Okay, so I have one from Texas Monthly, which was published in...
Oh my god, Mom! Jeez.
What?
Mom, yes, hi, hello, we're recording. Can I help you? Hello?
Did she butt dial you?
Oh my god.
Okay.
Yes.
For hopefully the last goddamn time, I have an article from Texas Monthly. It was published in 1999, which it will be relevant later, and I think the dude who wrote it had a personal vendetta against Madalyn Murray O'Hair, which I will get into.
Was it Skip Hollandsworth?
What?
Was it Skip Hollandsworth?
No, and I have no idea who that person is. Okay.
He writes for a Texas Monthly magazine.
Oh,
that's all.
Okay. So I have an article from All That's Interesting. I have a Guardian article, Wikipedia, as always. I have an article from the American Atheist magazine. I have a Playboy interview. I have a Slate article, and I have something from the Jewish Virtual Library, which for some reason is very difficult for me to say. So, a couple notes before we jump in. This first part is just going to be about, why I chose her. So I've rewritten my decision to cover her, 6 different times, because every time I, went back through everything, I had a different reason, you know? So, she's one of those people who I agree with, 30% of the shit that she did. And that 30%, in my opinion, had a really good impact on, society and our legal system and all that. It's the other 70% that I have a problem with.
Yeah, she, did a lot of good stuff, but she's also incredibly problematic.
Yeah, and so that's the part we're gonna get into today, because, she's normally hated for getting prayer out of schools, which she isn't even solely responsible for, and that's the 30% that I agree with. And if you don't hate her for that, that's what you celebrate her for, right? But in my opinion, she should be hated for the other 70% of the shit that she did.
Oh my god.
She sucks, dude. And, I realize that it's Women's History Month, and maybe I shouldn't be picking somebody who's, terrible. Maybe.
I like how you went from the Equal Rights Amendment to this.
Yeah, I know. Well,
you were
the thing
women
is,
are great, except this one.
The thing is, with the Equal Rights Amendment, it's too much stuff. It was just going to take me forever, and I was going to have to do it.
Oh, no, that's fine. I just think it's kind of ironic.
Well, I actually meant to bring that up, and then I forgot. Yeah, I was originally going to cover the Equal Rights Amendment because it's Women's History Month, but then I was like, this is too much. I'm tired. I don't want to. And then I thought about Madalyn Murray O'Hair, because I'd seen an episode of Forensic Files on her, and I was like, oh, okay, maybe I can look into this person. And then the more I looked into, I was like, holy crap. Like, I was hate writing most of these, which is how I ended up with 18 pages of notes.
Yeah, she kept texting us. She's like, now it's 15 pages, now it's 17 pages.
It was
like, you need to go to bed.
At one point, she was like, it's 20 pages.
No, it never got there. It got to 19. It never got to 20. I died a little
bit inside.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, and so, like, I just wanted to cover her. You know, this isn't going to be, like, I think I have another episode in March. That will be my official Women's History Month entry. This one's not. Let's just say that.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Are you going to talk about the crime?
Yes.
Okay, that's all.
That's why this is so long, is because this is kind of like 2 stories in one. And I wanted to
so much. Her life is so interesting.
It's so interesting.
But, like...
But God, she sucks.
It's just like her life is too much at once.
Yeah, it is. And then I think some of it too is like some people try to like martyr her, and that's not like an accurate understanding of her death.
That's not what happened.
No, it's not. And so like I want to set that straight too. And then the other thing I want to just bring up before we get into it, as I said, she was an atheist activist. I'm going to get into her actual, well, not even beliefs, but like her handling of religion later. I just wanted to state outright, her brand of atheism is not one that I subscribe to or support. It is very disrespectful of religion and people who follow them.
I would call... Yeah, she would be considered, like, a militant atheist.
Yeah,
like,
and I personally...
If you're not an atheist, you're garbage.
Yeah.
That's her.
And I personally don't approve of that. You know, I don't see the benefit to it. And even if I did, I still wouldn't do it because I just think that's a shitty thing to do to a person.
I just don't think that anybody, regardless of what you personally believe, should be able to tell other people what they should believe. Exactly. You can give them options of what you think they could believe, but you shouldn't sit there and be like, well, you should believe it because I believe it, or don't believe it, or whatever.
Exactly.
Because if you're so sick of Christians doing that to you, then when you're doing the exact same thing, it's like, wow, you're
trust me, we get into that. Trust me. This is not going to be a what's the opposite of like a smear piece? This isn't going to be like a feel-good thing where I try to paint her in a good light. I am being brutally honest and being like, hey, she was kind of terrible. And, like, I'm mostly giving this part as a warning because some of the shit she says, like, I kept it to a minimum because I didn't want to, like, unduly upset people. It's really inflammatory, kind of racist and bigoted sometimes, anti-Semitic as well, which we will get into in greater detail later. So if that is something that you, listener, if you feel like you cannot handle, skip this one because we go into detail about that because I think it highlights that point that she's kind of a hypocrite, honestly, which we will get to.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah, and like I kind of compare her, this may not be a fair comparison, to the Westboro Baptist Church. She's an extremist.
I hate them.
She doesn't
I was
represent...
raised Baptist, and the Westboro people, no.
Yeah, they don't represent what mainstream Baptists believe. That's how she is, at least in my opinion. She does not represent
I'm not saying
what
mainstream Baptists are the greatest either,
atheists, I suppose, or
did I tell that
non-religious persons.
Did I tell that story about when I was teaching 4th grade Sunday school and I asked them, who was the bad guy in this parable? Because it was like the Romans or some shit. And one little kid raises his hand and he goes, the Baptist.
But is he wrong?
I was like, were you listening? Like, that was not in that Bible passage, but whatever, bro.
I say that as the resident Baptist. Was he wrong?
I mean, it was when we lived in Florida, and you were either...
Yep.
You were either, like, some kind of non-white and Catholic, or, like, that entire class was Hispanic children.
Yeah.
Or you were white and Protestant.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, Florida's where my cult church was.
Yeah. She was never in Florida, oddly enough. You'd think she would have been, at least not that I know of. It's kind of fuzzy in there.
This is only somewhat related. Did I tell you guys that me and my friend watched Jesus Camp the other day?
You told me.
Oh my god, I love that movie.
I love it so much.
Then we literally got like 4 minutes in and we had already paused it 6 times to talk about our like trauma from being raised in the
laugh
church.
at you having religious trauma. I'm sorry.
There's so much. It's so bad.
Yeah.
And literally it took us like 4 hours to get through the movie because we kept pausing and being like, oh my gosh, I bet that dude's a pedophile. Oh my gosh, like here's this weird story from like.
Okay, we need to watch that together at some point, please, because I would love to hear this commentary.
Okay. You want to hear the, like, wildest story I told Maddie?
Yes.
It's probably not the wildest story I have, but it's the wildest one that I remember at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So this was at my cult church in Florida, and it was attached to, like, the elementary school that I went to, and, or I guess the school was attached to the church. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So, like, all of our Sunday school classes were held in the classrooms at the school part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And this one time we had... Sorry, my dogs are in the room.
That's okay.
This one time we had some missionaries that came to visit, and so they basically like gathered all the kids into the gym and had us like up in the bleachers, and then these 2 missionaries, it was a husband and wife, were like telling us about their missions to Africa and blah blah blah. And then the wife goes away to find their quote unquote friend who is shy. She goes into the women's bathroom, and like 20 minutes later, out walks her in blackface.
Oh my god!
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Uh-huh. And she was the friend from Africa who then proceeded to tell us all the great things that Jesus had done in Africa.
No.
Also, I'm 7 years old, and I'm sitting there going, does no one else realize that this is the same lady and she just painted her face? Like, does no one thinks that's weird? No one realizes that, like, one of the 10 Commandments is thou shalt not lie, and she literally just told us she was someone. Okay, no one thinks that's weird. So little 7-year-old me is like, what the fuck is going on? And so, yeah, problematic in many, 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 many ways. And then, so she's out here, like, telling us about Jesus in Africa and blah, blah. Keep in mind, they don't tell us where in Africa. It's just the whole continent.
Yeah.
No, it's a country.
Yeah.
Right? It's fine. And then the pastor's son, who, that makes him sound really young. He was, I don't know how old he was. He was at least 18.
Okay.
18 or older. I am not positive. I was 7. I did not care.
Yeah.
Also, my gauge of age range is not accurate ever.
Yeah.
I would be a terrible victim. But, so the pastor's son is there, and he was the one who had, like, introduced them and everything. So he's standing there while they're giving their, like, presentation or whatever. And then he starts, like, while this lady is sitting there talking to us in blackface, this kid, he's not a kid, but whatever, he starts having a seizure.
Oh, what?
And so he, like,
What?
he has a seizure and, like, passes out on the gym floor and hits his head so hard that he starts bleeding from his head. And so it's basically this, like think of a white missionary dude, like, stereotypical, and then this white lady in blackface and just some combination of, like, quote-unquote African clothing, and then this kid just passes out and there's a puddle of blood around his head.
Oh my god.
We're just a bunch of children sitting there going, so what do we do? Like, is this a sign from Jesus that maybe you should stop being racist? Maybe.
Because you killed Tyler.
Okay. And, like, part of me wants to feel bad for the kid because he, like, had a seizure, like cracked open his head, and like, yeah, that sucks. But then he went on to become a youth pastor and had an affair with a 12-year-old girl. So like,
ew,
that's not an affair.
God!
That is not an affair. That is he became a molester.
Yeah, that's pure pedophilia. So,
barf, 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 barf.
Yeah, church trauma.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
And that is why it took us 4 hours to get through Jesus camp.
Yeah, that was a Hannah kind of story. Like, damn.
And that's when my dad's like, I think you have repressed childhood trauma. And I'm like, trust me, it's not repressed. I just don't talk about it. But it's there.
I realize that Catholics are super culty and super problematic with a lot of things.
I meant in Hannah's story as in every other word was like a new twist to the story.
No, I understand. But what I was going to say is I don't have any like crazy ass church stories.
Yeah, true.
Like, I just don't.
You're right.
That's just like the one part that was like normal. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Catholics also don't really do like church camp. Really?
We don't. No. We're not into that.
So
we did have Mass in the Cemetery once, which was really goth, and I loved it. That's the thing. We're just super goth. Yeah. Like we don't do camp. We do like you
don't sit there with your new age songs and the more lights, the closer to Jesus you are.
Chants.
You're not allowed to have new age. Nothing from the last 2 centuries is allowed within a Catholic church, music-wise.
That is not true. Have you ever been to a college Catholic campus ministry? Because they're bullshit. No, I'm just saying.
Sharon's the non-religious
one.
Yeah. Okay.
I used to have to count the communion for that. Anyway,
oh my god, we're so off topic. Okay, anyway.
That's okay. It's still on topic. Like, it's still within the
See,
the
I kept my story to the topic.
And it kind of plays into how bad shit this woman's life was, to be perfectly honest. Because her life was very, very strange. There was one more point I wanted to get to before we get into her life, though. It's really short. Like, she sucked. She still didn't deserve what ended up happening to her. I'm just going to say that now. Okay.
I do want to say, I feel like sometimes I come off as, like, the least liberal of all of us, and I am, but that's because that is what my upbringing was.
Yeah.
And so the fact that I turned out even remotely okay.
Yeah, and I mean, you say least liberal, I mean, Hannah and I are so far to the left that I feel like the vast majority of the country
I was raised by socialists.
I wasn't. I'm just... My parents didn't raise somebody who listens to other people, is basically what happened.
Yeah.
On this podcast, have I talked about how my dad, like, gave us the talk about how people are different and it's okay to, like, have a different skin color? Did I tell you guys what his specific words to us were?
I don't think so.
He was like... I basically asked, Emma or I don't remember, asked, like, why are people racist? And my dad was like, it's just because black people are cooler.
Is he wrong? No.
He wasn't wrong. I was like, yeah, okay.
Okay. Makes sense.
That tracks.
Yes. Okay, so, back to actual story, or starting the actual story.
Right.
Okay, so if you can go to the... I don't know if y'all are even on it, but the second slide of the PowerPoint, this is her as an adult because I literally couldn't find any pictures of her as a child. So, Madalyn Murray O'Hair was born as Madalyn Mays in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania on April 13th, 1919. Mm-hmm. She was baptized into her father's Presbyterian church when she was 4. I'm going to be bringing up a lot more religious background than normal because it's relevant.
Okay.
Her family moved to Ohio during the Great Depression, and she graduated from Rossford High School in Rossford, Ohio in 1936. So in 1941, she married John Henry Roths, who was a steelworker, and both of them ended up enlisting in the military during World War II. So he joined the Marine Corps, and she joined the Women's Army Corps. Okay. So, in 1945, while in a cryptography position in Italy, she had an affair with Officer William J. Murray, Jr., who was a married Roman Catholic. So she got pregnant. He refused to divorce his wife, supposedly because it was against his religion, which so is adultery. But okay, bud, if that's what you're going to argue, then go for it.
But also, wasn't she married?
Yes, she was.
So they would have both had to get divorced.
Yeah, but she isn't Catholic. So.
Oh, yeah, fair.
Yeah, he's Catholic.
It's not as big as a deal to
It's not as big of a deal.
No, we don't care as much.
Yeah.
Actually, we do. We just like to say we don't.
Care a lot.
Yeah, we care a lot. My mom is divorced, and my mom is Catholic, kind of. We don't, like, she doesn't go to Mass, but she still considers herself Catholic. If she were to actually marry my stepdad, because they're living in sin and probably will forever, she wouldn't be able to do so in a Catholic church without getting her marriage to my dad, like, annulled within the church or something. It's a whole thing. But
yeah, my grandma is Catholic, and she had to, because she got divorced, and basically, like, her church essentially kicked her out.
Yeah.
That's bullshit, because my grandma has been divorced twice and married 3 times in the Catholic Church, and so
I think it just depends on the church specifically.
Yeah. Which, like, when my parents got divorced, I was in Catholic school, and I was, like, 8, and I remember them asking me about it, like, my teachers, and I was like, I don't know what's happening.
I remember you telling me that.
I was like, I don't know what's happening. I'm 8!
Right? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway.
I don't know how anything works.
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, so, yeah. She got pregnant with a Catholic dude who refused to leave his wife for her. So, she then returned to Ohio, divorced her husband, and gave birth to her first son in 1946. So, she named him William J. Murray III, but everyone called him Bill, so his name is Bill Murray. And then this part, she also changed her last name to Murray, even though she did not marry this person whose last name was Murray. I don't know why. I'm thinking it may have just been to, like, make things easier for them, because a mother and son having different last names wouldn't have been, like, accepted very well in 1946. But I don't know why she did that. Because to me, it's kind of weird to do that. It's kind of creepy. But if you have a legit, reason for it, I get it.
Yeah, just to have the same last name as your kid is probably...
Yeah.
But also, why couldn't she just give him her last name?
I don't know. Like I said, this woman makes
women
decisions
didn't have autonomy until
outside
they don't.
Actors. Mm-hmm. So, in 1949, she completed a bachelor's degree from Ashland University, which is a private Christian college in Ohio. She also earned a law degree from South Texas College of Law in 1952. And that law school was established by the YMCA, which is a Christian organization. Again, I'm bringing this up just to establish her religious history or whatever. But she had this law degree. She did not pass the bar exam, so she never practiced as an attorney. And so sometime after this, she moved with her son to Baltimore, where her parents and brother were living. And then in 1954, she gave birth to her second son, John Garth Murray, who had been fathered by her boyfriend, Michael Fiorillo. It's believed that he never met his father. I have no way to prove that or not. It's just what every article told me, was that he probably never met his father. And then also, some articles call this person John. Some of them call him Garth, and some of them call him John Garth. I think he preferred... Well, because his name is John Garth Murray. And so, like, I think he preferred going by his middle name. It's just sometimes that doesn't translate into articles and stuff. So, yeah, I think he preferred Garth. So if I'm talking about him in something that I wrote, that's what I'm going to use. If I'm pulling a quote from an article, I'm just copying it and using whatever they used. So if I say John Garth or John Garth, that's all the same person.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Why not just split the difference and call him Jarth?
Ugh. So she also studied social work at Howard University and worked as a social worker and possibly a probation officer at some point. Her timeline's really fuzzy, to be perfectly honest. Like,
well, she is a woman.
I mean, yeah, that's part of it. And, like, she job hopped a lot, and just a lot of information we're getting about her younger years are from her, and that's going to be biased. So,
yeah.
So then...
Women back in the day could... Okay, what I'm saying, this is going to sound really problematic, but it's just based on my own experience. A lot of women back in the day did not, like, could not give a clear history of themselves. Like, even when pressed. Like, my cousin's grandma is all over the fucking place because she immigrated here from the Philippines, and she just, like, nobody knows. We don't know how old she is. Like, nobody knows because she lied, and she won't, like, tell the truth, and we don't know, like... anything about her past, and she's like super elusive and weird about it. I don't know. It's very strange.
Yeah, I don't know.
She was a spy.
So
she's
that
the
actually.
One who, oh, sorry.
No, I was going to say that the spy comment kind of ties into the next point I was going to make about Madalyn Murray. She may have tried to defect to the Soviet Union.
Nice.
Oh my god. Come on, lady.
So, yeah, it's rumored that she tried to defect to the Soviet Union at their embassy in Paris in 1959 or 1960, but that the Soviets denied entry to one of her sons, so she decided against it. And so, like, one article said that her son Bill made this claim, and they didn't, like, Bill and Madalyn did not get along, and I'll get into that later on. Other articles state that she was, like, a card-carrying member of the Socialist Workers' Party and wholeheartedly supported the Soviet Union. I don't know which story is true. I don't know if either story is true. I don't know if this happened at all. But whenever we talk about...
Considering she was, like, super hated and the communists were super hated, it's possible it wasn't true.
It is.
And that someone was just like, well, she's also a communist.
That's very, very true. Especially because... You know, this court case she won was in the 60s, which was in the middle of the Red Scare. So, yeah.
So, like, it's very possible that someone just made that up and then the rumor kept spreading because it was just another valid reason to hate her at the time. Not valid, obviously, but...
We're going to, like, dissect an article she wrote later. That article makes me think she was at least sympathetic.
Oh, yeah, I'm not saying
we'll get into that.
Might not have some, like, glimmer of truth to it, but...
Yeah.
It could be propaganda for either side.
It could, exactly. There's no way to know. I just wanted to bring it up.
Yeah, for sure.
And then, regardless of whether or not she defected, she ended up in Baltimore in 1960. So, this is where we get to the court case. So if you can go to the third slide... this is her with her sons, I believe in front of the Supreme Court, in front of a building in Washington, D.C. I don't fucking know which one it is. So, in 1960, her son Bill was 14 years old and attending school within the Baltimore City public school system. So she discovered that the school was requiring its students to say a daily group prayer. So... this part, like, I can't find any reliable information on the progression of her religious beliefs. Both of her sons had been baptized into some branch or another of Protestant Christianity. And then in the Playboy interview that I'm going to cite from in a little bit, and that we're going to get into more detail later, she said that she'd been questioning things since she was 12 or 13, and that attending a Christian college, which required Bible study, pushed her further. And I'm like, okay, but then why did you baptize your children if that's the case? I don't know.
I mean,
how that happened.
I know a fair amount of people who just baptize their kids for tradition, or because it's like what their parents would want, and so they'll just like do it. They don't believe in it in any way. But they'll just be like, oh, well, my parents are Catholic and they say my kid needs to be baptized, so I guess we'll just do this ceremony. It's fine.
Yeah. She doesn't seem like that kind of a person, though.
Yeah, you're right. So, I'm just saying that, like, it could just be, like, for the tradition of it all sort of thing. Or if she was still, like, on the fence of, like, I don't know if I believe, I don't know if I don't. Like, just in case, I guess I'll baptize my kid.
Yeah. I don't know. Whatever that progression was, she didn't approve of the school's actions and sued the school for violation of separation of church and state. So, she claimed that her son was bullied for not participating and that the administration had basically, like, supported the bullying. Plus, just on principle, that's unconstitutional. But you need some kind of an injury to bring a case, which is why her child being affected was even brought up, because you can't just go in and say, this is unconstitutional, if you're not, like, involved in it, if that makes sense. There has to be, like, a negative effect from it most of the time. It's a big whole thing. Okay, so... this is, like, the least amount of detail I will ever go into about a court case. It was initially dismissed, because there really isn't a whole lot to it, honestly. It was initially dismissed by the trial and appellate courts, but it was consolidated with another case called Abington School District versus Shemp, and was heard by the Supreme Court in 1963. And so they voted 8-1 in Shemp's favor, saying that mandatory Bible readings by students in public schools were unconstitutional. So basically... the school could not force students to participate in a group Bible reading or any kind of Bible reading whatsoever. As long as it's a public school. Private schools, you can do whatever the fuck you want with that. Public schools, you can't. So, I would like to note that prayer in schools other than Bible readings had already been ruled unconstitutional the year before in a case called Angle versus, I think it's Vital. I'm not really sure. A lot of people point to her as like the sole reason why prayer is not in schools, and that's not true.
No, it was like, wasn't it the Jehovah's Witnesses who were like, you can't make my kid participate in this because we don't do that.
I don't know.
Or was that the pledge? I can't remember.
It's probably the pledge. I don't think, I'm looking up that other case real quick. I don't think that they were Jehovah's Witness. The prayer, or the pledge seems more in line with Jehovah's Witnesses, though. So, I don't know. But yeah, regardless, she isn't the sole reason that this happened. So, I think that this was the case that pulled out prayer, like, fully, you know? And she's definitely, like, the loudest and most well-known of the plaintiffs in these cases. So, I think that that's part of it. So, yeah. Unsurprisingly.
Well, and everyone loves a good scapegoat.
Especially if they're a woman. So, There's that. So, yeah, unsurprisingly, she was met with a lot of backlash over this. So, if you can go to the next slide. This is an album from a Christian band, and it says, 10 reasons my Madalyn Murray O'Hair must be stopped and 10 ways to stop her. I don't know if this is like a recording of a speech of some kind or if it's actual songs. I just thought it was funny. So, there's that. And so, this is something that always confuses me, and we've gotten into it before. A lot of Christians have a habit of sending death threats to people whom they disagree with, and that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And that happened.
Okay. Let's back up
We're
for
only
1
slightly
second because
hypocritical.
I would like to amend what you just said. It's okay. There's a okay. I'm about to get real fucking pissed off. So there's a difference between people who call themselves Christians and people who are actually what they should be referred as Biblians, because they don't give a shit what Jesus Christ actually said. Yeah. They only care what the Bible says, but only certain aspects of it. Mm-hmm. So to clarify what you just said, these people are not actually Christians because they don't believe in the followings of Jesus Christ, because Jesus Christ was a progressive, non-violent, person. Meanwhile, these people are like, you offended something that I read in a book, so I'm going to freak the fuck out and send you a death threat. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, they're the ones who take the words in the Bible as like absolute law, and it cannot be interpreted in any other way, and it's only the certain verses that they care about. It's so based in.
Because they don't give a shit about Leviticus. Like, go back and look at that. Are you going to sell your kid into slavery? You're not allowed to eat fucking shellfish.
They literally just pick and choose which verses they believe in, and it's like they pick and choose what context they believe it in. Like, the whole point of the Bible is that it's open to interpretation. Like, that's literally the whole point of it. And so many people who claim to be Christian don't allow for that. It's whatever way they read it, and that must be the interpretation of it forever and ever. And like there's no getting around it. And basically they're just radicals, and they don't not in a good way, and it's not in the proper teachings of the Bible or just Christianity in general. The whole point of Christianity is to be loving and take care of, like, literally Jesus took care of the poor, took care of the sick, like.
There are 7 things that you have to do as a Christian. You have to, feed the poor, take care of the orphans,
take care of the downtrodden, like.
Yes, give out, you're supposed to take care of people, like, give them health care. You're supposed to make sure that everyone is provided for. There's, like, 2 other ones I can't remember. But,
but literally, all of them are like humanitarian efforts. They're not in any way. It's like the whole point of the tithe wasn't supposed to go to the church. It was supposed to go to the people. Like,
yes. Anyway, this has been Radical Christians.
This has been Christianity Talk with Hannah and Shelby.
We're not even radical. This is like normal. This is what Christianity is supposed to be. You're not supposed to be like... Think of any conservative
There's this fun new thing called deconstruction, which is basically taking what you learned in the church and deconstructing it down into what you may or may not still believe, and figuring out how it works for you in your life and what you actually want to believe, sort of thing. So, like, if you're struggling with it, I got some recommendations for you. But anyway.
But if you're going to send someone a death threat, don't call yourself a Christian. Yep. That's what I'm saying. Thank you. Goodbye. Anyway, the Supreme Court thing that I was thinking about was West Virginia State Board of Education versus Barnett, 1943.
Okay.
And it was that children could not be forced to say the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Goodbye.
Cool.
Also, if you're sending death threats, then you can't say you're pro-life.
If you're for the death penalty, you can't say you're pro-life.
If you're for the fucking death penalty, you can't say you're pro-life.
Like,
it's just there's...
Sorry, I just blew out my microphone screaming.
Look, these are things that me and Hannah feel very passionately about. I can't even speak. I mean, not that Shannon doesn't, but Hannah and I grew up in it, and
I mean, I technically did too. I just stopped.
Yeah.
I just stopped.
I'm gonna look at pictures of dogs now, so I don't rip my hair out.
So it's just one of those like soapboxy things that she and I.
Oh my god!
We're just gonna stop
that
now.
Scared me so bad. Peppa just jumped on my back, and it felt like someone just put their hand around my neck. Holy shit, Peppa!
Oh my god. Can I move on now?
Yes.
Okay. So
this could be so long.
I mean, it was already going to. Yeah. It was already going to be long. I wasn't expecting the rant. I should have. That was a mistake on my part to not expect some kind of a rant of some kind. Not that it wasn't justified. It was. So, anyway.
Look, it's a very heated topic in my own brain.
Yes. So, Madalyn said in a 1965 Playboy interview that the following things occurred after the case was filed.
Jesus Christ, it's hot in here.
So, she was fired from her job as a supervisor in the city public welfare department. She'd been there as a psychiatric social worker, and she was unable to find another job. There were several incidents that she termed psychological reprisal. So the rest of this chunk is basically just going to be me reading quotes from this article. So, quote, "The first episode was with our mail, which began to arrive, if at all, slit open and empty, just empty envelopes. Except for the obscene and abusive letters from good Christians all over the country calling me a bitch and a lesbian and a communist for instituting the school prayer suit. Those somehow arrived intact." Yes.
How does getting rid of prayer make you a lesbian?
I don't know. I honestly don't.
I just want to know what that logic is.
That's a fair question. I don't know.
Not that I haven't heard that logic my entire life, but that's a really big leap.
Yeah, it is. I couldn't give you an explanation for that one.
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah. So those kinds of letters, quote, "they somehow arrived intact and by the bushel basketful. Hundreds of them actually threatened our lives. We had to turn a lot of them over to the FBI because they were obviously written by psychopaths, and you couldn't be sure whether or not they were going to act on their very explicit threats. None did, but it didn't help us sleep any better at night," end quote. So that happened. They also received constant harassing phone calls, including one that was made to her while she was in the hospital recovering from an operation. So the caller claimed to be a friend of the family and was telling her that her father had just died and that she needed to go home and take care of her mother. And so she called her mom, obviously very upset, and her mother said, quote, "What are you talking about? He's sitting right here this moment eating bacon and eggs," end quote. Just continuing with that, quote, "My Free Thought Society office was broken into. Our cars were vandalized repeatedly. Every window in the house was broken more times than I can count. Every flower in my garden trampled into the ground. All my maple trees uprooted. My property looked like a cyclone had hit it. This is the kind of thing that went on constantly over a 3-year period," end quote. Because it took them...
Get out on the trees. Rude.
Yeah. Additionally...
What do the flowers ever do?
Additionally, Bill and Garth's classmates and teachers treated them horribly. this next part has a tiny bit of animal abuse in it, so just be prepared for that. Quote, "The neighborhood children, of course, were forbidden by their parents to play with my little boy Garth, so I finally got him a little kitten to play with. A couple of weeks later, we found it on the porch with its neck wrung." Yeah. And then... a
little bit of animal abuse? Shannon, what the fuck?
I know. It's bad. I meant, like, a little as in one sentence. Sorry, I should have phrased that better. And then... continuing on with that quote, "Late one night, our house was attacked with stones and bricks by 5 or 6 young Christians, and my father got very upset and frightened. The next day, he dropped dead of a heart attack. The community knew very well that he had a heart condition, so I lay a murder to the city of Baltimore," end quote. So all of that happened to her and her family over a 3-year period because she was attempting to get prayer in schools removed, which it already had been for the most part. And then finally, this all came to a head when Baltimore police showed up at her home attempting to retrieve her son's girlfriend. Now, her son's girlfriend was a 17-year-old runaway, and due to the incidents which occurred during this attempted retrieval, Madalyn was accused of assaulting between 5 and 10 Baltimore police officers. I'm getting different numbers from different sources. What? Yeah. So apparently this woman single-handedly assaulted between 5 and 10 Baltimore police officers, which, whatever. And so then...
that sounds sus, but okay.
Yeah, it does. They then decided to move to Honolulu, Hawaii in 1963. So basically right after this happened and shortly after they won the court case. This was partially to get away from, like, her... all of the hate that they were receiving, and it was partially to evade arrest.
Nice.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah. So...
I mean, Baltimore.
They're very Catholic. You know, it's a very religious town to be trying to do something like this in, especially in the 60s. Which I think that's something I probably should have brought up. In 1963, you're in the middle of the Red Scare and McCarthyism and an attempted push to bring Christianity into government and government spaces because communists were atheists. So they were trying to, like, balance that by going way too far overboard. So I think that's another contextual element that needs to be taken into account as well. Yeah. So
every time you say Baltimore, all I can think of is Hairspray.
That's fair.
Good morning, Baltimore.
That's fair.
When me and McCall took our road trip.
Oh, it's great.
But no, when me and McCall took our road trip up to New York City, we stopped in Baltimore the first night. And, I mean, we stopped there because that's where Poe's grave is, and we wanted to see that. Mm-hmm. And then we just stayed the night there. And she got so annoyed at me because when we woke up the next morning, basically until we got out of the city limits, I just sang Good Morning Baltimore over and over and over again. And I was like, I'm in the city, you can't make me stop.
When else
I have to take the opportunity.
Exactly. It's what I was going to say. Like, you don't know when you're going to have that opportunity again. You got to milk it for all it's worth.
Right? But also, I don't know all the words to this song, so it was just a lot of Good Morning Baltimore over and over again. Which, like, fair, that could be annoying.
Yeah, it's all good.
It's fine.
Okay, so they fled to Honolulu. It was in Honolulu that Murray gave her Playboy interview, and I want to take a small detour to discuss this interview. So if you can go to the next slide, this is her in Hawaii.
That is a beautiful picture.
It is. It's great. It might be photoshopped. I don't care. It's still amazing.
It does look a bit photoshopped.
It probably is. It's still great. I don't really care. So, we are going into kind of detail in this article for a couple of reasons. One, it's a great encapsulation of the conflicting feelings that I have for her, and just... because on the one hand, I'm like, you did all these great things. And on the other hand, it's like, oh, you're terrible. You know, it's just, this is a great look into that from her, you know. It also gives a glimpse into her attitude and general demeanor, which I think are relevant to understanding her as a person.
Fair.
So, it was conducted by a journalist. I forgot to write down his actual role. His name is Richard Chergaskis, and most of it took place at Honolulu's Tripler Veterans Hospital, quote, where she was being treated for nerve injuries, which she claims were inflicted by the beating she says she sustained at the hands of the police during a melee that precipitated her departure from Baltimore. End quote. So she was in the hospital.
That's a lot of things in that sentence happening.
It is. Basically, she gave this interview from her hospital bed because she claims she had nerve damage from being beaten up by the police, which I'm not going to say one way or another whether or not I believe that statement. So the way we're going to go through this is I'm going to give, like, in some parts, I'm going to be pulling direct quotes. Other parts, I'm just going to summarize, like, what we're discussing. Also, we kind of already not have done this. I don't want this to turn into a religious debate. I'm just going to say the thing that she said, and then we're going to move on from there.
Oh, you fucking hope we do.
Yes, I do.
We'll see how that goes.
Yeah. I kept the actual inflammatory comments about religion to, like, one quote because I think it's a good example. I don't think I did too much. I tried to keep it low because I knew that you guys, you know, are very strong in your own religious beliefs, and I didn't want this to turn into people attacking Christianity because that's rude, and I don't want to cause undue harm to people. So,
listen, we can fucking take it.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I know, but I don't want to be. I know, but like I don't want to be that person to pile this on and make you guys feel like you need to defend yourselves. That's not what I'm trying to do. This is the very first thing that happens. And this part I do want to complain about because it's a horrible thing to say. So the very first question that Tregaskis asked was, why are you an atheist, Mrs. Murray? Which, like, that's a fair question to ask, right? Her response was, quote, because religion is a crutch and only the crippled need crutches. I can get around perfectly well on my own 2 feet and so can everyone else with a backbone and a grain of common sense, end quote. That is the most ableist fucking bullshit I have ever heard. Like, holy shit.
What a...
Exactly.
Oh, that's awful.
Wow.
This is the kind of stuff where I'm like, this is how she's similar to the Westboro Church. Because she's batshit. Like, she managed to offend the religious community and the disabled community in that one. Like, it's...
in one foul swoop.
It's the first sentence. It's literally the first question. So...
We're going up from here.
Yeah. I don't know if we go up or down. We kind of just stay consistent throughout the rest of it. So... she then discusses how her study of the Bible led her to become atheist and how she thinks the world will be vastly better off without any religion in it whatsoever. And Tregaskis there's too many S's in his name, good lord. His response to this is, quote, how about the welfare and charity work to which many Catholic, Protestant, and Jewish organizations dedicate themselves, end quote. Which, like, I also want to say, I mean, I read this interview. I don't know if there's, like, an audio recording. I couldn't find one. I would love to hear... like, the actual verbal tone they both have. I would just love that. Yeah,
like the inflection and all of that.
Yeah, and then also, like, the interviewer, Tregaskis, he has great questions. Like, this is a very good interview to just read if anyone's interested. It's a very good interview. So, yeah, he asks about welfare and charity work that a lot of religious organizations dedicate themselves to. She says, and this is the part that's very inflammatory, and like I said, I think it's the only part that I put in here that's really, really inflammatory, so I'm sorry. She says, quote, oh, they love to point to their hospitals and orphanages, most of which are restricted, by the way, which is kind of true. But what do these, quote, good works amount to? There's nothing but a sop to the clerical conscience, a crumb thrown to the populace, alleviating some of the miseries which the church itself, particularly the Catholic Church, has helped to instigate and perpetuate. This is her tone always. This is the kind of stuff she says in every single interview, every single article she writes, every interaction that she has. This is how she is as a person. She has no sympathy or positive regard for any religious institution whatsoever, and she is going to make her disregard for these religious institutions very, very, very well known. So, she just has a whole lot of things to say. Also, she really hates Catholics. I don't know why she hates the Catholic Church.
She was raised Protestant.
It's because...
I think that's why.
No, listen. It's because that guy wouldn't divorce his wife for her.
Actually, yeah, that is a theory as to why she hates Catholics.
Fair.
Like, that's an actual theory as to why she hates Catholics. So.
Yeah, I know. That's why I said it.
No, like, that's probably half of it.
I know. Least. So, Anyway, I just
I'm all for calling out the church and I use the term the church very broadly, but I'm all for calling out like institutions of religion for like discretions, anything that they do wrong, like any sort of trauma they cause. I'm all for that, but to just sit there and like,
because she is actually disregarding that the good religion can do to an individual person, even like she does not recognize that good,
right? Like it brings a lot of people a lot of comfort.
Exactly, but she says that if that's the case, then you're mentally ill, which is not true.
No.
Well, and that's the thing. Like a lot of the points she makes, I agree with them personally. I just don't think the way that she presented them is acceptable to be telling other humans.
Yeah,
you can have whatever opinion you want, but if you're a dick about it, then like.
Exactly.
I don't know. You don't deserve to express your opinion.
Exactly. So, she continues on with statements regarding her beliefs, which are common for non-religious people nowadays. But in the 60s, you didn't talk about these things. Like, just for examples, such as not necessarily believing that Jesus even, like, existed. That the Bible isn't a historical record. Like, stuff like that. Which, again, nowadays, more mainstream within the non-religious community. In the 60s, you did not say stuff like that. Mm-hmm. She then discusses how she got involved in the court case and explains the repercussions, which I did earlier. And then she explains why they chose Hawaii to flee to. So this next part's a quote. I decided that we'd have to take our chances with the law and get the hell out of Baltimore. I thought of seeking asylum in Canada or Australia or England, but I didn't want to leave the United States. Because for better or worse, I'm an American and this is my land. Which, take that in context.
It's not.
Okay, take that in context. So I decided to fight it out on home ground, and finally we hit upon Hawaii. Like...
That's even worse.
Yeah.
It's even worse.
I know.
Lady.
I know.
Lady.
There's more. Hang on. Which Hawaii only became a state in 1959. I just Googled that. Just so everyone's aware. And we completely stole Hawaii from them when we murdered their monarchs. I'm just...
Yep.
Yeah. So, there's that.
Yeah.
So...
Genocide. It was a genocide.
So...
Anyway.
Yes. So... And, okay, so this is the rest of that quote. So I decided to find it out on home ground, and finally we hit upon Hawaii because of the liberal atmosphere created by its racial admixture, and because of its relatively large population of Buddhists who are largely non-theistic and might therefore be more tolerant of our views.
There's so much wrong
in
that statement.
And so...
There's so much wrong.
And the rest of this quote, just to finish it. So we packed up all the worldly possessions we could carry with us and took the next flight to Hawaii from Washington. End quote. I feel like you two have comments about this part of the interview.
Just the whole thing, if we could just...
Yeah. It's very colonialist. Like, it's... Yeah.
Find it out on home ground.
Like, she literally could have moved to New York City. Like, I don't understand... You know what I mean? Like, you could have moved to any major city, pretty much other than Baltimore or somewhere in Utah, and you would have been fine. Like, I don't understand. See, this is what I mean. I agree with 30% of the shit she says, and then the other 70, I'm like, no! Yeah, and so, once they got to...
There's so much to unpack in that statement that I can't
There's so much to unpack, exactly, but we, like, yeah.
We don't got time for that.
No.
That's that John Mulaney quote.
Yeah.
We don't have time to unpack
all of that. So, she says they were taken in by the minister of a Unitarian church, and she talked that up, like, to, quote, the vastly different intellectual atmosphere that prevails here in Hawaii, end quote. I don't know. She eventually found a rental, which was offered to her and her family, because her entire family went with her. It wasn't just her. It was offered to them by a man who, like, supported... The court, like, supported their activism, I guess. I don't think that getting involved in one court case makes you an activist necessarily, but he supported that cause. So, the next part of the interview focuses on another suit that she was involved in. She attempted to have tax-exempt status revoked from, I think, all churches. She ended up losing that, in case we didn't all know how the U.S. tax system works. But the case was still ongoing at the time of the interview, so she just, like, discussed that case. She again discusses the hate mail she received. Then they get into feminism for some reason. I couldn't figure out the jump. Like, even reading it, I was like, wait, how did we get to feminism? So, Tragraskis says, quote, according to many sociologists, American women have never enjoyed greater freedom and equality, sexually and otherwise, than they do today, end quote. Which, like, no. And she also says, no. And she basically just explains how being a woman in the 1960s in America still sucks. Which, again, part of 30% that I agree with.
Yeah, like, fair.
Yeah, she then says that she thinks that she frightens men, and she kind of, like, revels in that, which, again, I support. She's very, like, I think I scare men, and, like, just, like, stuff like that, which, again, I fully support. She then gets very candid about her sexual history. So, quote, I've had, if you count my marriage as an affair, which I would like to do rather than count it as a marriage, because I'm not proud of having been married, I've had 5 affairs, all of them real wingdings. I've enjoyed every goddamn minute of them, but sooner or later I've outgrown every one of them, and when I did, I got fed up and threw them out. If they can't keep up with me, the hell with them, end quote. And then Tragraskis is like, what if they get tired of you? And she's like, so they should do the same thing to me. That's what this all equal, bud. Like, you know, yeah. So I just wanted to include that because she called her marriage and affairs wingdings, and I just thought it was funny.
I think that her interview was translated into wingdings. Now that I think about
it. She's got an interesting view of the world.
I would really recommend reading this interview. It's fascinating.
There's also a movie on Netflix called The
Most Hated Woman in America. It's mostly about the crime that we get into later, and I didn't watch it.
I've seen it.
Okay, apparently it's not super duper accurate and isn't very sympathetic to her.
They make her seem like a bitch.
Yes, it's not very sympathetic to her, which, I mean, I'm not being sympathetic to her either, but I'm also not victim blaming her because, honestly, like, no. But again, we're not there yet, so we'll talk about that later. So she then discusses how she doesn't approve of marriage as an institution and that sex education should be included in schools. She concludes by saying that these court cases are only a small part of what she planned for herself. This is a long quote, but just stick with me. So, quote, long ago, when I was a very young girl, I said that I wanted to go everywhere, see everything, taste everything, hear everything, touch everything, try everything before I died. Well, I've been a model, I've been a waitress, I've been a hairdresser, I've been a stenographer, I've been a lawyer, which no, she wasn't. I've been an aerodynamics engineer, which I also doubt. I've been a social worker, I've been an advertising manager, I've been a WAC, which that's the Women's Air Corps thing, Women's Army Corps from World War II. There isn't anything you can name that a woman can do that I haven't done, which again I doubt. Before they put me under, I am going to get involved in everything there is to get involved in. That's what I want from life. I don't intend to stand by and be a spectator. I want to be right in there in the midst of it, right up to my nose, totally involved in the community, in the world, in the stream of history, in the human image. I want to drink life to the dregs, to enlarge myself to the absolute limits of my being, and to strive for a society in which everyone, which she's a hypocrite for saying this, regardless of race, creed, color, and especially religious conviction, has the same exhilarating raison d'etre and the same opportunity to fulfill it. I know. In other words, to paraphrase Jack Kennedy and John Paul Jones, from this day forward, let the word go forth to friend and foe alike. I have not yet begun to fight. So the reason I read this whole thing, other than to point out that she's a massive hypocrite, like this on its own is kind of like the mindset of a lot of non-religious people, like live your life to the fullest because there is no afterlife. And a lot of people live for their afterlife, you know? And she's basically saying, I'm not going to do that. But again, I also wanted to point out that she's a massive hypocrite because that's what this turned into. So,
yeah,
with all of this, you can see how people in the 60s thought that she was a nutball. I think she's a nutball, and I'm not living in the 60s.
Yeah, she's interesting.
Yeah, and then, yeah.
For sure.
This had happened before this interview came out, but Life magazine, which I already mentioned this, had dubbed her the most hated woman in America in 1964, and she just ran with it, basically. So, we are done with the interview now. So, while in Hawaii, her son's girlfriend gave birth to a daughter whom they named Robin. He ended up abandoning Robin, and at some point, Madalyn adopted her. I have no idea what happened to the girlfriend. No one even knows this woman's name. Like, it's really bad, in my opinion, that we do not know who this person is, but we don't. Also, I'm only like 60% sure that Robin was born in Hawaii. She may have been born in Texas, but again, the timeline's really fuzzy, so I'm not 100% sure. So, in 1965, which was the same year that this Playboy interview came out, the family relocated to Mexico and then to Austin, Texas. The Mexican government had actually kicked them out of Mexico. I don't actually know why. And then Maryland dropped the charges against Murray, those assault charges. I think they may have arrested her or tried to when she was in Texas, but I only saw one article about it, and they ended up dropping the charges regardless, so, like, she may have been arrested. I don't know. Also that year, she met and married an ex-FBI informer named Richard O'Hair, which is where we finally get the O'Hair part of her name. In the 1940s, he spent 4 years as a card-carrying communist in Detroit while reporting to FBI agents. He named nearly 100 party members in a public and publicized hearing of the House Un-American Activities Committee in 1952. So he basically, like, McCarthy'd a shit ton of people. And then, yeah. And then there's a biography that claims... there's a biography, I don't know if it's about her or about him, but it claims that he married her, like, as an FBI informant, you know, like, specifically to report back to the FBI. But that claim has been disputed by, like, actual FBI files, and that didn't happen. So we're not entirely sure where that claim came from.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so the rest of her life was devoted to her organization, American Atheists. So if you can go to slide 6, that's their current logo. I couldn't find an older one. Okay. So this organization had been founded in 1963 as the Society of Separationists. And she was the one who founded it. So she served as the president until 1986, at which point her son Garth took over. So, and they still exist today. They basically exist to file lawsuits involving the separation of church and state. And so this is called impact litigation. You're specifically choosing cases which change laws for the public interest. Other notable impact litigation firms include Lambda Legal and the Church of Satan. They are an impact litigation group. So
they're pretty great, though.
They're fantastic, and they do a lot of the same, like, separation of church and state stuff that the American Atheists do. Mm-hmm. They're just not founded by a
speaking of that,
massive asshole. Yes.
In Somersworth, New Hampshire, which is right across the river from me, there is I think about this a lot because there's like a statue of the 10 Commandments right in the town square, and I don't think that should be there.
That's not
legal. That's just my opinion. However, they do fly a bunch of really great flags. Like, last month it was Black Lives Matter. Mm-hmm. Before that it was like National Recovery Month. Mm-hmm. And then this month it's a fucking Irish flag. So
yay!
Thank you. You did one thing right.
So, yeah, so with American Atheists, some of the more well-known cases that they filed are that the tax exemption one I mentioned earlier. I'm getting tired. My ability to speak English is going downhill, which they lost. There's one called O'Hair versus Hill. That was in 1978. It sought to have the Texas state constitution amended to repeal a provision requiring persons holding offices of public trust to believe in God, and she won that one. Basically, within the Texas state constitution, it said if you want to hold public office, you have to believe in God. And she sued to get that removed, and she did. Because that's super illegal and unconstitutional. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, she did that. There's one called O'Hair versus Payne in 1971. That challenged NASA's requirement that astronauts read the Bible during a spaceflight. That one was dismissed for lack of a cause of action, which that basically means, like, it was just, I'm gonna explain it. That was dismissed because, like, there's, like, that doesn't affect her, basically. She had no reason to be filing that. Plus, now, like, it got dismissed. She did stop Buzz Aldrin from taking televised communion on the moon, which he later said he agreed with that decision, as it would have been really polarizing to those whose religious practices did not include communion. So there's that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, communion is a very, like, specific, well, depending on the religion.
Yeah. Let's not even get into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, communion's a very important thing in all the religions that practice it, but, like, we each have different ways of, like going about it and what it means.
Shelby, no offense, but we kicked you out of our church for that reason, for a communion-specific reason.
I know. I'm just saying that, like, even, like, Protestant religions practice communion. We just do it in a different way. Yeah. Like, we don't do it every week, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. And you're not fucking goth about it. We're straight up vampires. We drink blood every weekend. Also,
like there's very specific like rules of like who can take communion and why and blah blah blah. So
that's how it is in Catholicism too.
We have that too.
Yeah,
I technically can't. You
have to be in a state of grace.
I wasn't confirmed.
Shannon,
I can't.
Cannot.
No, I don't.
Yeah, and that's why like anytime I'm at like a Catholic service, I don't take communion because I haven't been confirmed by the Catholic church.
Yeah.
So I don't take it at their churches, but I will take it at a Baptist church because ours is different. So.
Hi, please don't eat that. That's nail polish. I have this ratchet green nail polish on right now, and I'm picking it off, and Peppa is exploring it as if she's going to.
Great. Okay.
Cool. Anyway.
Yeah. So, one of the other, I don't know if this was like, I think this was a specific case, but I couldn't find the actual name. Plus, I didn't try that hard to be perfectly honest. She tried to get.
Google it.
It sounds like me.
Yeah. I have so much other shit to get through. I didn't feel like spending 20 minutes trying to find this. So, she also tried to get
I'm just lazy.
Yeah, she also tried to get In God We Trust taken off of American coins and currency.
Oh, I'm not Googling
and wanted, yeah, exactly. It's kind of...
Not worth my time.
It's vague, so I was like, I'm not going to bother. And she wanted Under God out of the Pledge of Allegiance, and I agree with both of those things.
Everybody wants that. So, that comes up like every 4 years. Like,
yeah, I know. Like,
I was going to say, the one on the Pledge of Allegiance... Yeah. Totally agree with that. In God We Trust on currency. That one doesn't bother me, mostly because I don't read currency.
Yeah.
Who's
I understand.
A nickel and is
that's like more for like
I understand the argument.
You know?
I do.
Yeah.
I guess. And again, very privileged of me to just sit here and be like,
because
I don't read my nickels, like, so like.
Well, no, just like for me, knowing that my currency has In God We Trust on it makes me very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like. My government should not be making statements like that because it's unconstitutional.
100% agree.
You know,
100% agree with that. Like separation of church and state.
It's probably just because they don't want to pay to re-mint money.
That's a huge
honestly, that they'd have to like completely change out all of their molds, which they do anyway. But you know,
still.
Also, pennies are worthless.
They are. We need to get rid of pennies.
Ban pennies.
Anyway,
please get rid of them.
Plus, both of those things were added in a anti-communist push kind of a deal. So, like, there's that. Anyway, throughout this time, she wrote articles for Playboy and Hustler, appeared on a bunch of different talk shows, and just, like, generally stayed in the spotlight. See if you can go to the next slide. She appeared on the Phil Donahue Show, which was one of the earlier, like, late-night talk show kind of things.
I'm a Donahue.
Okay. She appeared on that show several times, including she was on the very first episode in 1967. This is a photo from one of the times. I don't know which time. And then Donahue may have hated her guts, but I can't find an actual credible source for that. I saw in like a couple articles that somebody said that Donahue didn't like her because she berated him for being Catholic. And like, I could totally see that happening. I just don't have a verified source saying that it happened, so I don't feel comfortable saying that it happened. So
that's why I brought up that I was a Donahue, because I knew that fucker was Catholic, because every Donahue was Catholic. Anyway.
Yeah. She also wrote speeches for Larry Flynt, who's the founder of Hustler magazine, for his presidential campaign.
I know who he is because we have to pass that sign every single time we go to St. Louis.
Yep, we have a Larry Flynt's Hustler Club in East St. And we have to go by it every time.
Didn't he die?
Millie?
Yeah, he did. Pretty recently.
Like, recently? Like,
yeah, within the last month or so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he died.
I vaguely recall them saying it on the radio because they were like, what are we going to do with Larry Flynt's Hustler Club? And I was like, why do we care?
Don't think you have to move it or anything.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm
like,
sure he...
Pretty sure it's in his estate's name. Like,
he had... I can guarantee you he had a will. It's fine, guys. We don't need to be worried about that.
I don't think we need to be worried about Larry Flynt's Hustler Club. Okay.
Yeah. I think they'll be fine.
You know Hollywood's right behind it?
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah.
Millie asked us all the time. She'd be like, when are we going to go to that Hollywood's and ride the roller coasters? And we were like, what do you think happens in there? Because it's not roller coasters.
Oh, my God.
No, she just thought it was roller coasters. And we're like, that's
I mean, like, I'm happy that Larry Flint is staying open so people can keep their jobs. But I don't think we need to be worried about it.
No, we don't. So,
when are we going to ride those roller coasters? We're not. You don't want to ride that roller coaster, friend.
You're a little young for that one, ma'am.
Yeah. So, this next part is our next detour to rant about how terrible this woman is. So,
okay.
The American Atheist had a magazine. And if you go to the next slide, this is the cover page for the article I'm about to read you. So, in August 1989, we're not even there yet. And I know. Okay. In the August 1989 issue of American Atheist magazine, there was an article titled "The Shoah: Hope Springs Eternal." So, it was written by Madalyn. I read the entire thing. I wish I hadn't, but I did. So, I read the whole thing. I am going to be summarizing parts of it again. This is mostly summary. I did not pull very many direct quotes because it's just terrible. So, for context, for background, the article focuses on a dispute between a Jewish group of some kind. I even Googled this incident, one, to make sure it actually happened, and two, just to get more information. I couldn't figure out exactly what group this was, but it was a group of Jewish people. So it was a dispute between them and some Catholic nuns as to who should, quote, own Auschwitz, which those were her words, not mine. So what had happened was some Catholic nuns had set up shop in a warehouse just outside of the grounds of Auschwitz and set up a routine of perpetual prayers for the souls of the Roman Catholics who had met death in that camp. They also established a church in what had previously been an administrative building, and this was located within the grounds of the camp itself. The Jewish group felt that as the primary targets of the Holocaust, and they had a higher percentage, I guess, of deaths at Auschwitz, they should be the ones who had the ability to decide what kind of memorial was established. They also felt that the Catholic Church had slightly helped facilitate the Holocaust, which it kind of did. The presence... it kind of did. So...
yeah.
And then a deeper issue with this was... So this happened in... Crap, I didn't put the year down. 1986-ish, I believe. Maybe 1989 when the article came out. I didn't actually get the year. I really should have done that. So... The issue really was the presence of the convent would contribute to the minimization of the Jewish aspect of the Holocaust, which was already scarcely mentioned in the official communist-era descriptions on the site as prepared by the Polish government. So Auschwitz is in Poland. At the time, Poland thought of Auschwitz as a camp that mostly held Roman Catholic Poles, which we now know is not true. And that little chunk came from an article from the Jewish Virtual Library. And so this next quote, which is from a 2015 Washington Post article, "As a rabbi, I have deep respect for all places of worship. I also feel that Christian houses of worship do not belong at what is in effect the largest Jewish cemetery in the world." And this man had actually participated in protests at Auschwitz for this exact issue. So he was there on the ground trying to fight this. This isn't him just saying this is bad. And so this article is about this dispute, right? So I'm just curious, what do you guys think her, just knowing everything I have told you already, and then Hannah, whatever you know background, what do you think her position is on this issue? I just want to know.
I honestly can't say because it's going to be so fucking bananas that,
it is.
No words will...
Okay, that's
no
fair.
Words will encapsulate
that's
what
fair.
I think.
That's totally fair. Okay, so I just wanted to know if somebody had an idea, because I had no idea, and that I was just... It went a completely different direction than I thought it would.
And also, you're anger texting at us.
This is the part where I was angry texting.
Yeah, I figured this was the part.
Yeah.
Can we just... I don't even know. Okay, anyway.
So... So throughout the article, and it's a long article, so she takes this really weird tone where sometimes she is defending, and Oslo... This part is extremely anti-Semitic. I want to get that out there now. So if you're not okay with that, I will put in an editing note later telling you where you can jump back in to this conversation, because it is extremely anti-Semitic. So she takes... Boy. It's so bad, dude. She takes a weird tone where sometimes she's defending the nuns and calling the Jewish group whiny and over-emotional. Whew. Yeah, but at the same time...
About Auschwitz? Are you fucking kidding me?
We will get there. Okay, we'll get there. So, but at the same time, she is raking the nuns over the coals because the Catholic Church sided with Hitler, and she said that their beliefs are fully ridiculous. So, like, she's...
So what do you want?
Exactly!
What? Pick a side or get out.
Exactly. Well, that's the thing. She
pick
kind
a
of
side or get
nuns.
out of the argument. You're not part of either side, so just get out of the argument. It doesn't
stay in your
involve
lane.
You.
She needed to stay in her lane, and she was not doing that.
It doesn't involve you.
So, additionally,
you don't have to stick your nose in everything that has some sort of religious tie just because you don't like religion. Like,
exactly.
Get out of here.
Oh, two religions are fighting? I must give my opinion. Okay,
no,
can I just say, okay,
out.
wait. This is the whitest white person shit that she's doing right now.
Yes.
It's sticking your nose in where two other things are happening that are not white people business, and she just comes in. And
part of that is she doesn't believe that Judaism, I suppose, is a race. She thinks it's only a religion, so therefore you cannot be anti-Semitic.
Okay, she can just jump off a deck or something.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And
there's,
then,
again,
I know,
a lot to unpack there.
I know. Let's move on. I still have a lot to get through for this. So.
I'm gonna set my computer on fire.
I know. She, as I kind of said earlier, she always stated in interviews that she hated the Catholic Church more than any other religion, but this article disputes that claim. And, I mean, you would think she would say that the nuns, at least I thought she would say the nuns couldn't put their cross up because she isn't for any of that, but she seems to be arguing the opposite. So, I took this next part mostly from Wikipedia. They're a small summary of her worst beliefs that come out of this. So this is a quote. It's so bad, guys. Although it is not...
You sounded like you were just about to throw up.
It's so bad. So, quote, although it is not generally reported, Auschwitz was simply first and foremost a slave labor camp, and the labor provided was much needed by Farben, Krupp et al. For the war effort. So she's defending them having slave labor. So there's that. Hang on. Let me get to more. I have more. So she claimed in the same, this is the worst part. She claimed in the same article that, quote, investigative and scholarly studies undertaken during the last 50 years, end quote, which this part I cut word for word from Wikipedia, so I should be quoting this whole thing. Anyway. So she claims in an article that there's been research undertaken during the last 50 years, such as a book by the Holocaust denier Paul Racinier, which established that the total number of Jewish victims was between 1 and 1.5 million, adding, quote, this is a far cry from an alleged 6 million, and then elaborated on that point. So here is a quote. Over and over again, and this is the part where I'm going to rant, so please let me rant. Over and over again, in the analysis of the situation, one compelling fact becomes clear. The Germans had nowhere near the train capacity to haul 6 million people to concentration camp points. Had the Germans...
I'm gonna vomit.
Yeah.
I'm so mad right now.
Dude, had the Germans...
I literally, I'm sitting here, rage brushing my hair because I have to do something with my hands because I am so mad.
I just ripped a whole nail off.
I know.
I'm so fucking upset.
I know. Let me continue. Had the Germans attempted to house, clothe, and feed 6 million Jews plus millions of others, the activity would have paralyzed their military operations. I'm going to disprove this right now because it pissed me the fuck off, as you can tell. So, that's just not true. That is a gross misunderstanding of how the German government functioned. And more specifically, for one thing, with some overlap, the people running the camps and the people in the military were not the same motherfucking people. So,
yeah, no shit.
They weren't the same people. The German army was separate.
They packed 6 million people onto one train in one day.
It was over a 6 or 7 year period that they were doing this. So, there were two main branches of the Schutzstaffel, which was Hitler's basically fake military that he created for himself. So, the Allgemeine SS was responsible for carrying out general policing and those race-based policies in Germany. They were the ones who were saying you're Jewish, you can't have your business anymore, stuff like that. The Waffen-SS was the more militaristic branch. They were the ones who assisted the military in various military operations. The branch that ran the camps was, let me see, it's German. Shit, I should have run at it. The Totenkopfverbände, which means death's head units. That was the branch that ran the camps. It is completely separate from the military. They had their own trains, their own railroad system, their own supplies. They had ample ability to carry out the Holocaust. Like, this...
Yeah, it's the same thing with the Russians, because it's like saying that the Red Army ran the gulags, but they didn't. The NKVD
they didn't.
Did,
it was separate. And I just... That's always something that gets...
And to say that they needed, like, the labor from the camps to support the war effort...
We're not even there yet. I'm gonna expand on that a tiny bit more in my next little chunk. I just, like...
Of screaming.
Yeah, in my next chunk of screaming. I'm sorry for screaming, but this really pisses me off because, like, I have a history degree.
No, you're good,
I studied the Holocaust, and so for people to look at all of
First
this
of all,
proof,
if you're a Holocaust denier, get the fuck out.
Seriously,
that's all I have to say.
Seriously,
go away.
Like, it just drives me
just go away.
Fucking nuts that they would. You look at proof. It's like the ultimate just denial of reality. Is to look at all of this proof from the Holocaust and say, that didn't happen. Or, it didn't happen as bad.
If your biggest claim that it didn't happen was that there weren't enough trains, you
in
are...
Germany?
Severely confused about how Germany works.
She is also just ignoring, like, the sheer efficiency of Hitler's government. Like, it was very, very efficient. They kept records on absolutely everything. They knew where everybody was at all times. Like, it was obviously had a horrible outcome. It is a model for bureaucracy. We should not model things off of it.
People still make fun of it today.
Like, seriously.
Like, it's still a running joke about how efficient everything was.
Exactly. Like, it is just a gross misunderstanding, and I think a deliberately willful one, because she doesn't want to recognize Judaism as a race. And because she has such disdain for all religions, she isn't going to accept that they were persecuted for being religious, even though she says she isn't okay with that, which that gets into my next point. She also says at one point that Germany's goal was to get rid of any Jewish population within Germany, but she doesn't give any moral equation to that goal. So, like, later she says, like, it goes without saying that no one should be persecuted for their religion. But when she said their goal was to get rid of Jews, she just moved on. Like, that was it. Which is why, again, like, she was kind of defending slave labor. She was. Like, she was totally defending these actions. She also says, well, because you would think she would say, the Germans wanted slaves, and they wanted to drive out all the Jews. That's bad, because they were being persecuted for their religious beliefs. But she didn't. She literally said they wanted to get rid of their Jews, and she moved on.
Yeah, okay, she's...
Yeah.
I find her more problematic now. I didn't really give a shit about her before, just because I was like, yeah, whatever, we shouldn't pray. We shouldn't make kids pray in school.
Yeah.
But then, like...
yeah, like, if you just know, like, the base level of her story, then yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever, but...
And then, there's more, guys. So she also says that Jews were, quote, invited to leave for 5 years before the Holocaust even happened, which is a gross misunderstanding of that policy.
Like, they didn't just go, yeah, here's an invitation. If you want to move away, go for it.
Yeah, that's the exact opposite. People were forcibly removed from their homes let me finish this, please, and or murdered for several years before the camps were even operating, and many Jews attempted to leave, but were unable to do so either because the German government refused to let them, or because other countries refused them entry, like the United States did.
Everyone please read the first chapter of Journey to the Land of the Zeks and Back by Julius Margolin. And then get back to me on that. Thank you. Goodbye.
Yeah. It's kind of similar to when I was in, I think in my senior year of of college, I had to take like an entry-level history class for my degree. And we were talking about the slave trade. And one girl said that the slaves traveled to the United States. And my professor was like, no. They were taken to the United States. They were kidnapped.
There's a Texas history book. Hold on. I gotta look this up. Okay, hold on.
I just want to say, as, like, someone who has studied language very extensively and very intensively, like, the way you phrase things matters. There is such a thing as connotation. It is not just whatever the dictionary definition, like, basically states. That is not accurate. You have to be careful of how you phrase things, the phrasing around things. You have to be careful. Because to say that they traveled implies that they had a choice. They did not.
Yeah.
And this goes for all contexts. Like, you cannot just use, like, a close approximation of the word.
Yeah.
Like, you have
to be precise.
It's like when you take the SAT and they're like, which one of these is the most best answer?
Yeah.
And it's like, yes, saying that they traveled technically...
That's technically right, but...
technically, if we are going only for definition, then yes, I suppose. But it is wrong. Like, it just is. And you have to be aware of that. You cannot just... especially with things that are so, like, heavily charged emotionally or, like... I don't know, just like in any way, like, you have to be careful of how you phrase things. Yeah. You have to be accurate with it.
Yeah.
I can't find the exact quote I was
No, I know
for,
what one you're talking about. There's some textbook that says something similar to that slaves
also
traveled.
Just know that when I told you I have, like, a topic picked out for the future that is, like, very much a soapbox for me. Just know that it's linguistically related.
I fully expected that. I expected nothing else.
Because I have strong feelings about language, okay? Mm-hmm. And words. And I am ready to fight Hannah on in being a prefix.
You know what? Okay, maybe I misspoke.
We're not getting back
I'm not
on
saying
this.
that it should be a prefix. You know what? No, fuck it.
Oh my God.
It should be a prefix. I'm saying that any prepositional phrase that begins with "in" should be connected to the word that follows it. And I'm gonna stand by that, Shelby. And you can come fucking fight me in a parking lot. I will be at the Denny's in Belleville in
That was the Denny's.
19 hours.
No, Hannah,
the one
that was
where
the Denny's.
your sister was super drunk?
Yeah.
Yes.
That was the Denny's where we used to do our custody switches. I've been in the parking lot of that Denny's hundreds of times.
Also, in case anyone is wondering, I wasn't actually angry in that last episode. I was just so
she was
dead tired that everything came out as rage, okay? It's just, it is what it is.
And we
I
knew
need therapy.
that, so
but also, I do agree with Hannah, okay?
Yes.
Just getting that out there, I do agree that in as a prepositional prefix makes sense. However...
Yeah, it does.
However, in the context of modern language rules, in written language, you can do whatever the fuck you want in spoken language.
We don't even speak modern English. We speak contemporary English, so...
I have feelings about that, but okay.
Guys, we still have so much to get through.
No. All I'm saying is that I agree with Hannah, but in the context of modern English rules, in writing,
I teach that shit.
In a prefix is a negation. You cannot use it as a preposition. It does not have those properties, okay? Anyway, moving on.
Okay, let's do this afterward, please. We still have so much to get through. Okay.
We haven't even got to the damn
No, we haven't gotten to the damn crime yet. So, she concluded, there's still a little bit more on this that I want to discuss. She concluded, quote...
Oh my God, I have to pee.
Okay. The good news for the Jews of the world is that they did not lose as many of the clan as they had thought they lost.
What the fuck?
Central Europe was substantially cleared of Jews, but that was primarily through emigration, which... This is one of those things...
Okay, so the rage I feel about language does not even compare to this rage.
Hang on.
Just so you know.
This is kind of going back with that earlier discussion. If you're ignoring the context, she's not technically wrong because all of the camps were not in Germany. They did not... I don't think they put a single concentration camp within the borders of Germany. I'm just saying. I just thought that was an interesting little point that I had added in here earlier, and then we got into that discussion.
I'm pretty sure that's not how she meant it.
No, it's not. It's not at all.
Because she didn't do that research. You know she didn't.
Going back to that Texas textbook, that wasn't immigration.
Exactly. That wasn't immigration. Yeah.
So she's wrong.
Yeah.
I'm not going to allow her to be correct in this situation in any context.
This is the last point that we're going to be quoting her for this thing. The high death rate from starvation in the camps during the last months of the war was due largely to the Allied extermination policies. Perhaps that is why the United States continues to send Israel $6 billion a year as a gift. Guilt has its obligation. So, this whole thing pisses me off and confuses me because first and foremost, she was a World War II veteran.
I just want you to know that I am currently wearing my Apple Watch, which I never wear, but I'm currently wearing it, and my heart rate is so freaking high right now.
So, just moving on.
My phone. That was the sound that you heard earlier.
It's bad.
The blood pressure level is so high.
It's so bad. So she seems to think that the Allies were more responsible than the Germans for deaths at the camps, which is wildly inaccurate. She seems to be arguing that the Catholics...
How do you get to that conclusion?
Well, that's what she said, because she said...
What reality do you live in?
Exactly, because she said most of the deaths are from Allied policies in, quote, like, cleaning up the camps or whatever. Yeah. But again, she doesn't think that there were 6 million people in these camps anyway.
Okay, yeah, a lot of people died when the camps were liberated because they couldn't handle food.
Exactly, or they were so sick already that they were going to die regardless.
They were so malnourished that they couldn't take care of them. They already had, like diseases and infections. And
yeah, that wasn't because of the Ally
It wasn't because they just, cleaned up camp. No.
Mm-mm. So she also seems to be arguing throughout the article that the Catholics should be able to do what they want at Auschwitz because the Jews didn't actually go through anything that bad. Which...
Then why do the Catholics have a say?
Mind?
I mean, that's basically what she's... I mean, y'all can read the article and argue this point with me, but that seems to be... I mean, the general listeners, if they want to have this out with me, I don't think that anybody would. But, that's the tone that I seemed to get was, why are the Jewish people complaining? Nothing that bad happened. That seems to be what she's saying. And this article...
Look, I don't generally... want to commit murder. I might joke about it a lot, but it's not generally something that I actually think I might follow through on, but Shelby, I might.
Shelby, just wait! Just wait!
I have some good news for you.
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
I know, I'm just saying.
And I would like to point out, a lot of these points that she is making... communist governments at the time were also making, and this is what makes me think she did indeed try to defect to the Soviet Union, or was at least pro-communist. Because a lot of these points she's making at the time were things that Poland, as a communist government, was saying. So I just wanted to throw that in there. It's not relevant.
I want to say something really quick.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so... You can't... Okay, you can say the government of Poland, but I wouldn't say Poland as a government, because that...
True, yes. No, you're right.
It was a rough time for Poland.
You're right.
Okay?
Yeah, you're right.
They were having a really bad time.
Yeah, you're right. So, I am bringing this all up because I think it would be deeply disingenuous of me not to. For one thing.
Oh, boy.
Another thing... I think it shows you don't, because, I feel like a lot of people have this misconception. You don't have to be religious to fall for conspiracy theories, and being an atheist does not mean that you are inherently smarter than someone who isn't. I think that proves that very, very well.
I'm religious, and I don't believe any conspiracy theory that exists.
No, I mean,
I'm well aware that I grew up in a cult. It's fine.
She also ends the article by saying, this is the last line, people who rant and rave about religion are out of touch with reality, and my next line is, you're doing right now, bitch!
Literally,
that's literally what she's doing.
What reality do you live in where
exactly. You cannot
the Jews didn't have anything that bad happen?
You cannot be a Holocaust denier and say that other people are out of touch with reality.
Oh my god.
Those two things are
really
mutually
wish her name was Karen.
I know.
Oh my god.
Also, this was just a weird point. I only know about this whole situation because it's in her Wikipedia article. And I listed off 10 sources earlier. Not a single one brings any of this up. And I thought that was weird. Personally.
Yeah, it's a little odd.
And the main point why I'm bringing it up is this is the reason why people should hate her. It's not because she got prayer out of school.
100%.
Well, okay, I can see why the, not old-timey, but 1960s Christians would hate her because of the prayer in school thing and not give a shit about the Jewish thing, but at the same time, it's again, you're all being hypocrites.
Yeah, well, I mean,
please, if you're gonna care about yourself, care about everyone else too.
Yeah, even, nowadays, even in the 90s, after the next part of her life we're discussing, people still hated her because of the prayer stuff. People still hate her because of the prayer stuff. And I'm saying, don't hate her for that. Hate her for being a horrible, bigoted anti-Semite, is what I am saying. So,
well, I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. Some people who still want prayer in school are actually anti-Semitic themselves.
I know. I'm just saying.
Just so you know. Yeah. I don't know if you knew that, but
yeah, it just makes me concerned.
I don't know if you're aware.
I don't know if you're aware, but
no, I know.
Humans are trash.
I know. I'm just saying, like, factually, there are better things to hate her for. So we're done with all that nonsense.
Oh God.
So.
I'm going to have to go and look at more dogs now.
Yes. We are now moving on to the next part of this story, which this is actually shorter than the rest of it. So, the rest of the story starts in 1995. So, if we can go to the next slide, this is Madalyn with her son and her granddaughter.
After I was born.
What?
He's a funky looking dude.
He is.
He looks like a Muppet. They all look like Muppets.
They do. I don't know what year this photo was, but it was not after 1995, I can tell you that much.
It's a very large suit.
So, this is her son Garth and her granddaughter Robin. Garth, at this point in time, was president of American Atheists. The rest of this is just going to be, like, set up for, like, where everybody is in time at this moment. So, yeah, Garth was president. Madalyn was still pretty heavily involved. Bill's daughter, Robin, was now an adult and was also very heavily involved in the organization. Madalyn and Bill had fallen out several years before after he became an evangelical Christian and began fighting to bring prayer back into schools. So,
nice.
Yeah. Some reports say that he disowned her. Some say she disowned him. It may have been mutual because he really hated her atheist activism and she really hated that he became an evangelical Christian, especially since he was the kid at the heart of her court case. So he's not involved in any of this at this point in time, is the moral of that little point. Additionally, Madalyn's McCarthyist husband had passed away in 1978. So, American Atheists was the most successful national atheist group, and it had 30 chapters, a cable TV show, and a radio show on 150 stations. In 1987, Madalyn bought a new headquarters for more than $1 million, and she bragged that it was in cash. So the institution was funded by donations. At its peak, it's estimated that O'Hair controlled up to $15 million in donated assets. So that is just some setup for the rest of the situation.
But that sounds an awful lot like a church.
They also, I wasn't going to bring this up until later, they also had tax-exempt status. So you're not wrong.
I'm just saying.
No, I know.
It sounds an awful lot like a religious institution.
It does. They're just not doing any religious work whatsoever, and they're just filing court cases. I mean, like, they're filing court cases against religious people. They're not doing any actual, like, religious work. So, in late August 1995, Madalyn, Garth, and Robin went missing. And they went missing along with around $600,000, although that part wasn't discovered until much, much later. So, they were all living and working in San Antonio. A worker came into the office on August 28th, 1995, and found a note on the locked door which read, quote, "The Murray O'Hair family has been called out of town on an emergency basis. We do not know how long we will be gone at the time of the writing of this memo." And people kind of thought that was kind of weird, obviously.
That sounds real sus.
It does. So this next part is from Texas Monthly, that article. So when it became clear that this was no overnight expedition, American Atheist employee Spike Tyson went to their home. Because I guess they all live together. I don't know.
I'm sorry, who names their child Spike Tyson?
I know. It's so fantastic. It's terrible. It's just bad. So he says he found Madalyn's blood pressure medication on the kitchen counter and a half-eaten breakfast on the table. On August 29th, so the next day,
that's gotta be moldy.
The Griffith Small Animal Hospital, which had boarded the family's dogs many times, got a call from Robin, who was crying. She told the receptionist that the O'Hairs had to leave town on a family emergency, but that she didn't have time to drop off the dogs. The hospital agreed to come pick them up. Robin never returned for them. So my thing with this is, one, I never leave my medication behind. As somebody who is tied to their meds, like, you do not leave that shit behind. She was also... I
am too, however.
In theory, you don't leave your medication behind.
You're not supposed to.
Yeah. I mean, she was also
diabetic.
diabetic.
You have to make an emergency trip to a CVS.
No, I've done it. Just in theory, you don't do that. And then she was also diabetic. I don't think, most of her diabetes supplies were found in the home as well. And then also with the animals, I feel like all three of us have never accidentally just left for an indeterminate amount of time and not gotten our dogs taken care of beforehand. even if it's an emergency.
I care about my cat more than I care about myself.
Exactly. So the whole thing was just weird.
Gonna throw that one out there.
Yeah, so the whole thing was just really weird. And so they did call their work colleagues, although the calls were described as cagey. And the last communication with any of the O'Hairs was on September 28th, 1995, so a month later. And so this is another quote from that Texas Monthly article. They were being very cagey, American Atheist member Ellen Johnson told Time. You couldn't get a straight answer. They were lying about a lot of things that was obvious. I was screaming, what the hell is going on? Are you okay? And they're saying, just calm down. Everything's okay. Everything was not okay. Robin was totally disturbed. You could hear it in the way she talked. Johnson was especially spooked after one conversation with Madalyn during that month. I've talked to her for years, she said. If you were to talk to your mother, you would know when something was wrong. Something terrible had happened. Additionally, several times, callers said the phone was answered by an unidentified male who then handed the phone to John. So, they were in contact with people for a month, just to sum this all up, but then after a month, nothing else happened, and the communication they did have was really suspicious. So,
Interesting.
Yeah, on September 29th, 1995, which was the day after the last phone call anybody had, John Garth Murray picked up $500,000 worth of gold coins at a San Antonio jewelry store. This was the last time any member of that family was seen alive. And that was from the Texas State History Association. So, the thing is, there are a couple things. They'd been really weird. I'm setting up why people thought what happened to them happened to them. They were really weird about the cash flow for the organization for a long time. Like, it was all donation-based, but they weren't making as much as they spent. This is from the Texas Monthly article. Pleas for money weren't going as well as they used to, and in 1993, the radio show was dropped. That was also the last year for American Atheist Annual Convention. On top of everything else, Madalyn was suffering from diabetes, high blood pressure, and dizziness. Roy Withers, who was an attorney who saw her in court, remembers her being wheeled into the courtroom, and he said that she was in bad shape. So, moral of that, they were being really weird about the money. Additionally, the three of them were, like, kind of dicks to their employees and to, like, people in general. This is from that Texas Monthly article. Madalyn, John, and Robin rode herd on the office, sometimes viciously. They belittled everybody, says a former staff member. They were always telling employees they were stupid, that they didn't know what they were doing. And you could hear the three of them yelling at each other and door slamming. And they didn't have, like, too many close friends. Which I will have to say, that quote, which it was corroborated in a couple of other articles, but the way this was written... This is from that Texas Monthly article. It was written by a guy named Michael Hall. And this was the guy who I think has a personal vendetta against Madalyn. Because throughout the article, he seems to think that her atheism is the cause of her bad behavior and that being an atheist is bad behavior in and of itself. He really plays up how terrible Madalyn's life was. Like, he brings up several times how she didn't have any friends and that no one cared when she went missing, which isn't necessarily true. And
it's just that she was a dick. It had nothing to do with her beliefs.
Exactly. And then, so at the time of the article's writing in 1999, she was missing and was presumed dead. And it was a really callous tone, in my opinion. And it was very victim-blamey because at the time, we didn't know what had happened. Anyway, I didn't like the tone of that article, but it had really good information in it. I just wanted to bring that up. Because it was like an obvious slant against Madalyn. Like, it was just very, very palpable that this man hated this woman. So, anyway, all of these factors led most people at the time to think that they had taken money, which they had bought all those gold coins, and that they had just left the country in order to avoid responsibility for the financial problems that American Atheist was facing. Some people also thought that Madalyn had fled, like, to die in peace, basically, and that they may have gone to New Zealand for either of those options. So yeah, that was what people thought had happened at the time. So with the actual investigation, it wasn't taken very seriously for quite a long time. So quote, oh, I didn't put where this quote was from. Crap, sorry. Instead of sharing, I think this is from a crime magazine article. So instead of sharing their concerns and assisting each other in the search, Madalyn's son Bill and the American Atheist traded insults in the media. Each accused the other of caring nothing for the O'Hairs and seeking only to make hay out of the disappearance for the publicity it would bring. So that isn't helpful. Also, none of their friends actually reported them missing. Bill reported them missing in late September, which was about a month after they went missing. In one article, a family friend claimed the police wouldn't take their report. He said that police said, you wouldn't report my lawnmower missing, which is basically saying that only the family can report them missing, which isn't true. And police dispute this, so, like, I don't know what's true. I just know nobody filed a missing persons report for, like, a month, and that Bill did it. And basically what this means is the police did not investigate this pretty much at all. And so, additionally, this will become important later. In October of 1995, a male body was found on a riverbank east of Dallas, and it was stripped naked and missing its heads and hand.
Its heads?
Its hands and head, sorry. Other way around.
Sorry, not to be that person.
No, you're right. You needed to. No, dude, when I listen back and I misspeak and nobody corrects me, I'm just like, why did I say that? And nobody noticed. Why did nobody tell me I was wrong? Trust me, it's fine. So...
half the time I don't notice.
So, in the summer of 1996, so roughly 6 months after they went missing, a San Antonio reporter... oh, no, it would have been a year. Sorry, I can't do math. A San Antonio reporter by the name of John McCormick was assigned to the Murray O'Hair story for the 1-year anniversary of the disappearance. I should have just read the whole thing. So, next slide. This is John McCormick now. I think this is his Twitter profile picture. I couldn't find an older one. So, quote, this is from Crime Magazine. A few months later, a tip led McCormick to one of the few indisputable facts he could work with. The American Atheist finally admitted in its 1995 tax returns that a large sum of money was missing, and all the evidence pointed to John Garth Murray as the thief. He had arranged for the transfer and withdrawal of a large amount of money, over $600,000, last September, shortly before his disappearance. In addition, he had sold his Mercedes through a classified ad. So this was just, again, confirming that they were missing money and that John Garth probably took it. The IRS found out about that, and they revoked the American Atheist tax-exempt status, which, again, I have no idea how or why they had that. I just know that they did. They then seized the Murray O'Hair's home and property in February of 1997, and they sued the American Atheists for back taxes. And now we are done with tax nonsense. So, this next part is a quote from Crime Magazine. Reporter McCormick hitched up with a private investigator named Tim Young, who had decided that the search for one of America's most famous women and her family looked intriguing. Young obtained John Garth's cell phone records for the last month in San Antonio. Together, McCormick and Young started checking every phone number on the phone logs. Before September 1995, John Garth didn't use his cell phone much, but during that last month, over 200 phone calls were made to financial institutions, jewelers, overseas, long-distance services, travel agencies, all tending to confirm the idea that the O'Hairs had been planning to flee the country. But as the second anniversary of the disappearance arrived, Bill became convinced that his relatives had died. So this is a quote from Crime Magazine. Murray also stated flatly that the world, big as it was not big enough to hide the O'Hairs. And this part's like, but whatever. You have these 3 obese people. Robin requires 2 airline seats wherever she goes. My mother uses the F word in virtually every sentence that comes out of her mouth, which I, sympathize with. Just singularly, they would be remembered. Together, it's like waving a red flag in front of a bull. So he's basically saying, like, if they were alive and out doing shit, people would have seen them. He said it kind of offensively, but that's what he said. And so in June of I
mean, it's his family. He can say
yeah, I know. And plus he hates them all. So, like, that's part of it, too. So in June of 1998, McCormick, who, again, is that reporter, received an anonymous phone call. The caller told McCormick that the disappearance of a small-time con artist named Danny Fry might be linked to the disappearance of the Murray O'Hairs. The caller was close to Fry and knew that he had traveled from Florida to Texas in the summer of 1995 to stay with a man named David Waters, then had disappeared at the end of September, the same time as the Murray O'Hairs. The anonymous voice on the other end of the phone line was telling McCormick that Waters knew precisely what had happened to the Murray O'Hairs because Waters had kidnapped and murdered them. The caller was also afraid that the same fate had befallen Fry, and that was from Crime Magazine. So if we can go to the next slide... That's David Waters.
Hot.
That was the most 80s photograph I could possibly find of him. So, David Waters.
Is this from the original Law & Order?
It looks like it. So, he was an ex-con who Madalyn had hired to work at American Atheist. She did this a lot. Like, I think most of, like, the run-of-the-mill employees were ex-cons. Some people said it was because she was being altruistic. Other people said it was because it was cheaper. And I don't know which one's true. Probably the second one. But he had been fired in 1993 after embezzling about $54,000. And Madalyn had then written a very inflammatory article about him in the American Atheist magazine, which I couldn't find that actual article. And so Waters was actually interviewed in that Texas Monthly article, the one that I think the guy, like, personally hates Madalyn. And he claims in that article that the entire situation was part of a cover-up by Garth to hide money from a rival magazine that was suing American Atheists for racketeering. I didn't want to get into all that, but that's basically what happened. So he's claiming, I didn't steal the money. That was part of a cover-up from Garth. And the author seems to think that Waters, like the author of that article, seems to think that Waters did not commit the theft and that he was not involved in their kidnapping/murder, because at this point we didn't know what was going on. So, there's that. But again, he's also apparently very biased against Madalyn. They were able, I guess police were able to confirm that headless and handless corpse that they found in October of 95 was that of Danny Fry. McCormick continued investigating and basically collected all the evidence against Waters that the police and prosecution then ended up using. So this, again, is where stuff just gets kind of fuzzy for some reason. I think in 1999, Waters was arrested on a parole violation. So he was a felon. So as a felon, he was not allowed to own firearms, and he had a shit ton. Another man named Gary Carr, who they believed was an accomplice of his in various other crimes, was also arrested on similar charges for similar reasons. And so this part's from Crime Magazine. Using the evidence seized, including financial records and a bow saw, the FBI was able to piece together the story of the O'Hairs' last month on Earth. So, I am, again, still kind of fuzzy on how a lot of this happened. But Waters and Carr were then charged with various financial crimes, and Carr was charged with conspiracy to kidnap. So the rest of this is from, I think, Crime Magazine. It's basically just like the evidence, or it's what we think happened based on the evidence that we got. So the Murray O'Hairs have been held for about a month. Madalyn O'Hair, sorry, I'm losing my voice, had been the most closely confined at the Warren Inn Apartments in Northeast San Antonio, and Robin was probably her companion. Their principal guard was Fry, who had no serious criminal record and was regarded as a good-natured charmer with the gift of gab. Waters' ex-girlfriend later testified that Waters was so angry, this part's gross, when Madalyn O'Hair wrote her article denouncing him in her newsletter that he fantasized about torturing her and pulling off her toes with pliers.
What?
Yeah, so they were either murdered, probably by strangulation at Waters' hands, in the motel, or were transported either dead or alive to a storage locker rented by another associate of Waters, Chico Osborne. Again, this part's gross. Inside the locker, Waters and possibly Carr and Fry carried out the grisly task of sawing the bodies into pieces. Later, they were dumped into barrels and transported 120 miles to a remote ranch. The O'Hairs were dumped into a shallow grave where they remained undiscovered for over 5 years. And then with Fry, he survived the O'Hairs by a day or two at most. Then he too was gone, probably shot in the head and dismembered. Apparently, Waters was concerned that Fry was going to turn them all in. So basically, she was kidnapped, held hostage, and brutally murdered for firing someone and being rude to them later. It had absolutely nothing to do with her beliefs. Like, this can happen to anybody. And I think that aspect of it really surprises people, because if I'm going to be honest, most people who thought she was going to be murdered was, they thought it was going to be because of her anti-religion rhetoric. And again, I still don't think everything she did and said that she deserved this to happen to her. But I also don't believe in the death penalty for any crime whatsoever. So I think that plays into it. So, yeah, that whole part of it, as I said, I think that just surprises people because it was just because she was rude to an employee. Carr and Waters were charged with extortion because they had forced Garth to get those gold coins and a few other things. So at the time of the trials, they had not yet discovered the bodies, and they could not prove that the Murray O'Hairs had been murdered. So the two were never charged with murder, and Waters was never charged with anything involving the kidnapping. So after a 3-week trial, I'm almost done. Carr was found guilty of conspiracy to commit extortion, traveling interstate to commit violent acts, money laundering, and interstate transportation of stolen property, all charges related to the O'Hair case. He was acquitted of charges of conspiring to kidnap because the authorities had not yet located the bodies of the O'Hairs. And what I just read in this next part is from Wikipedia because it summed it up way better than all the other articles did. Waters was arrested and prosecuted. I don't know specifically what for. I think it was with the same kind of money charges. You know, he wasn't ever charged with kidnapping or anything. In a plea agreement to the charge of conspiracy, I don't know conspiracy to do what, but conspiracy, he agreed to lead authorities to the site where the dismembered bodies of the O'Hairs had been burned and buried. He was sentenced to serve 20 years in federal prison, which he had requested. The other option was to serve time in Texas State Prison on his earlier theft convictions. He did not go to trial for the kidnapping and murder of the O'Hair family. He ended up dying of lung cancer in prison in January of 2003. And then I don't know if either of them were charged with Fry's murder. I literally couldn't find anything about it. So I don't know. I feel like probably not. But because I feel like if they had been charged with it, I would have seen articles about it. So, the aftermath of this, Madalyn was cremated per her request. There was more detail I could have gotten into about, like, the state of the bodies and how they identified them and stuff. But I didn't really want to get into it, so I didn't.
Yeah.
And so, in 2012, a memorial brick for Murray, John, Garth, and Robin was placed at Luneff Point in Zilker Park in Austin, Texas. And then in 2013, if you can go to the last slide, the first atheist monument to be erected on American government property was unveiled at the Bradford County Courthouse in Florida, where other residents had installed...
Sounds like Florida.
Well, actually, I'm surprised because it's Florida. I'm amazed that they allowed an atheist monument to be erected at a courthouse in Florida.
You're right.
Are you fucking kidding me? You can do anything you want in Florida.
That's true.
Yeah. Anyway,
it's free for all.
Where other residents had installed a monument to religious ideals, it is a 1,500-pound granite bench and plinth inscribed with quotes by O'Hair, Thomas Jefferson, and Benjamin Franklin. So, that's the end of that. That's the bench in that photo. Yeah. I'm sorry that this is so long. It's actually less than I thought it was going to be. But you understand now why my notes are 18 pages?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't do this on purpose. I did not think this story had this much to it until I started doing the research. And then by that point, I was already in so deep and I was so mad. And I was like, I want to talk about this. So, yeah, that is all I have on Madalyn Murray O'Hair, who, did some good, but then also didn't believe the Holocaust happened. So,
Sure.
Does that balance that out? I think it does. Yeah. I know.
I have some feelings, most of them rage.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I feel like sometimes when people die, not sometimes, most of the time when people die, people don't want to say bad things about them. That was not the case with this woman.
Look, I'm not saying she deserved to die the way she did.
No, she did not. No.
Because no one deserves that.
No.
However, I'm not upset that she's gone.
I'll allow that. I just wanted to talk about this woman because she's very interesting. And again, I want people to hate her for the right reasons.
Well, I do hate her.
Yeah, I do too.
For some very specific comments that she made.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's all I have. Thank you for letting me rant about this woman for 2 hours.
Thank you for letting me and Hannah get on our soapbox every once in a while.
I kind of factored that in. Like, I knew that was going to happen.
Look, I know. Anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway. Anyway.
Yeah. So, yeah. That's all I got. Unless somebody else has a final comment they would like to make. No. Yeah, I didn't think so.
No, I'm good.
Yeah.
I think
we covered a lot of comments.
I think.
Yeah. All right.
I think she's a trash person.
Yep. Still didn't deserve to be murdered, but
no one deserves
No one deserves to be murdered.
No one deserves to be murdered.
No one deserves to be murdered.
That's the thing.
Nope, I'm not.
I could name other podcasts that would give this exact same information I did and say she deserved what she got. I don't think she did.
You're right.
You know?
You're right.
I don't think anyone deserves to be
murdered. I don't either.
You're right.
And, like, I'm not saying that her death absolves her of anything, because it doesn't. And that was what I meant when people murder her. They kind of think that because she was murdered, that excuses her behavior.
No.
And I don't think that's the case either.
How you die doesn't determine how you live.
Exactly. It doesn't. So. Yeah. Our ending is that we have no ending. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to The Triad. Our music is by Scott Buckley. Our audio is recorded by our sound engineers, Craig Bott and Audrey Credo.
If you like the show, please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Tumblr as The Triad Podcast. Our website is thetriadpodcast.wordpress.com. There, you can find information about our latest episode, including the show notes and sources.
We're also on Patreon as The Triad. Currently, all Patreon funds will go towards the cost of hosting the show. Each tier has its own rewards, but every patron receives our undying gratitude. Do you have comments, questions, or stories? Email us at thetriadpod@gmail.com. And thank you again for listening to The Triad, where we're spooky but sensitive.